Hi, my name's Andrew Kennedy, and I want to do everything I can to help you become a more informed voter. So today, I'm meeting with Sherry Poland, the director at the Hamilton County Board of Elections in Norwood, Ohio. This place is massive and really cool. Let's take a tour together and discover what Sherry thinks are the most important things you'll need to know. Sherry Poland, Director of Elections here at the Hamilton County Board of Elections. Tell me your story and how did you wind up here?
Sure. Well, I began my career with the Hamilton County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I was a paralegal in the Grand Jury Division when I was offered a job here at the Board of Elections. My title then was an election specialist. Elections was not something I knew much about. I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn about election law. So I accepted the position, started out as the election specialist, basically designing the ballots. So, my job was to draft the language for questions and issues to appear on the ballot design, program the election, anything really that had to do with vote counting. And I really enjoyed that, held that position for 2 years, and then in 2006 I was promoted to operations administrator. And in that capacity, I ran the department that was responsible for sort of all things vote counting related, programming the equipment, the tabulation system, the ballots, overseeing the absentee ballots being returned, the provisional verification process, so sort of everything related to vote counting. And then in June of 2014, I was appointed director. And as director, I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the board and the administration of all local, state, and federal elections that occur in Hamilton County.
As a Hamilton County resident, I appreciate all the work you've done to make it as seamless as possible for us because it's not easy, and what you're being asked to do is a lot of hard work. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We have a great team here at the Hamilton County Board of Elections.
What are your thoughts on ranked choice voting?
I actually do not have a lot of thoughts on ranked choice voting, and basically it's because I do not have any experience with it. It's not something, that type of elections that we've had in Hamilton County in years, so I don't have much experience with it. I do know it's a little controversial. I've heard a lot of debate about it. I think at this point I'll just wait and see if the powers that be would decide to go that route before looking more.
So if the powers that be do decide to go that route, then it would be your job to make sure the ballot reflects that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that would be our responsibility.
And there's other states like Maine. Have you even heard about this? They're doing ranked choice voting, and it seems to be working well up there.
Exactly. If that was our task, if that's what we were charged with, is to make it work, then we would. But I think that every state is different, and voters in each state wish to cast their ballot and have them counted perhaps in different ways, and I really think it's a state-by-state decision.
And I heard you say it hasn't happened in years this way. So we had ranked choice voting in the past?
We may have had it in the past. I'm not sure about that. I know that in my career, my 17 years here, it's not something that we've had in Hamilton County.
How many third-party candidates have you seen be elected?
Right. Well, there's something a little different. There's independent candidates, and then there's also minor party candidates. So when people think of third party, there is a difference between minor party and independent. And we have had independent candidates win elections. Not all offices are partisan offices in Hamilton County. Some are nonpartisan. So, example for the city of Cincinnati, it's a nonpartisan city, their elections are, which means there's no party affiliation next to their name. And then we have a lot of jurisdictions that are nonpartisan. So we do see independent candidates win, or not affiliated candidates win in some elections. As far as minor party candidates, that's a little more difficult. I don't, to my knowledge, in the 17 years I've been involved in elections, have seen a minor party party candidate win when running against a major party candidate.
Okay. And then the national races like the House of Representatives and the Senate, how many independent candidates have won those elections from Hamilton County?
From Hamilton County, none during my 17 years here. Sometimes that does happen where you'll have, a candidate from the Republican Party, a candidate for the Democratic Party, and then an independent or minor party candidate run. It's extremely rare in that type of a race for an independent or minor party candidate to win.
Do you help count some of the ballots yourself too?
I oversee the process. We have everything we do here at the Hamilton County Board of Elections is in a bipartisan fashion. So I have a counterpart that is of the opposite party, and we sort of go down the line. We have 44 employees, 22 are affiliated with the Republican Party, 22 with the Democratic Party. So when we count the vote, it's done in a bipartisan nature with both Democrats and Republicans counting that vote. And yes, the deputy director and I, on election night, we're in the vote counting room and overseeing that process.
May I ask, what are you then? If you're
Sure, my party affiliation is Republican.
And I'm independent, just so you know. Are there any independents helping count too?
No, and the way boards of elections are structured in the state of Ohio is that it is a bipartisan process.
So independents can't even help count anyway?
Well, we do have as far as non-affiliated voters who work the polls. So we do have independents involved in that way. And here at the Board of Elections, usually we hire temporary staff, and our temporary staff do affiliate themselves with one party or another, just like our full-time employees do. Our full-time employees are appointed by the local major political parties. It's the way elections are structured in Ohio. And I think it works well, especially when we look at this political climate right now. I can tell you that boards of elections are still a place where Democrats and Republicans come together and do the people's work. Our goal is to run a fair and efficient election.
Have you had any people write in something?
Yes, we have seen that. We have seen that done. I think there's a little bit of a difference in somebody just arbitrarily crossing out a candidate's name and writing in anyone's name. Then there actually is a way to become a certified write-in candidate. So if an individual basically just has to fill out a form wishing to be a write-in candidate for whatever office they may wish to run for. And what happens in that case, like let's say somebody files a write-in form to be a write-in candidate for governor. So on the ballot, their name would not appear on the ballot, but we would add a write-in option. So there would be a box for the voter to fill in with a line and the word write-in underneath it, so that the voter could choose to write in that person's name. And all those votes are counted, and if that write-in candidate would receive more votes than the candidates whose names appear on the ballot, they would win that election. In my 17 years, I've never seen that happen. I've never seen a write-in candidate beat a candidate whose name appeared on the ballot yet. Yes, win an election. I should say win an election, because we did have recently, a few years ago, a Cincinnati school board member who missed the filing deadline. He did not file enough valid signatures to have his name appear on the ballot, so we then filed as a write-in candidate. And he actually, although he did not win the race, he actually received more votes than candidates whose names appeared on the ballot. Didn't win, but that was quite a feat.
Well, this is all really interesting to me. Okay.
And, but speaking of write-ins, then we also have voters who will choose to write in anyone's name, not a certified candidate. And for example, the year that Harambe, the gorilla, was killed here at the zoo in Cincinnati, he received quite a number of write-in votes for president.
Interesting. I guess it's their way of saying, hey, we remember you, or what is your take on that?
And people will do that. I use Harambe as one example. We also have voters that will write in Mickey Mouse or Big Bird, or sometimes they write in none of the above. But when voters write in something other than a certified write-in candidates, our bipartisan team still has to review and that to see if it's a valid vote. So it actually causes a lot of work for election officials. I think the voter might be joking around. They might be wanting to, just remember something, commemorate something. It actually causes a lot of work for our bipartisan teams. Every time a voter fills in the little box next to the word write-in, when they scan their ballot, an image of that is captured through the machine. And so on election nights, the bipartisan teams have to look at every single image and determine whether or not that was a write-in vote cast for a certified write-in candidate or not, and whether or not it could be counted. So although voters may mean to be joking or whatever, it could cause our staff to sometimes work a 24-hour day in counting those write-in votes.
Interesting, which we don't want to have the government workers work overtime because that's our tax dollars. So
Exactly.
If I'm a third-party candidate and I want to run for the House of Representatives, it's my understanding that Democrats need 50 signatures to get on the ballot. Republicans need 50 signatures to get on the ballot. If I want to run for the House of Representatives, say, in Hamilton County, it's my understanding I need 1,000 signatures. Is that correct?
I would have to double check on
that
signature
right?
amount, but I know it is a significantly more a larger number than it is for the major political parties. But you also have to remember that for the political parties, they have to win a primary election. They have to be nominated by their local party. An independent candidate does not. So yes, a major party candidate only needs 50 signatures, valid signatures, in order to appear on the ballot. They could be challenged. There could be other candidates within their party that also run, and they have a primary and to determine the winner and who gets the nomination if there's more than one for each party that files. But an independent candidate doesn't need to have a primary because they're not being nominated by a local party. They're being nominated by citizens of their district. Mm-hmm. So yes, independent candidates do need a significant more signatures, but that's because they're not being nominated by a political party. They don't have a primary. They're actually being nominated by those that sign their petition.
I'm just going to interject my thoughts on the process. And so I'm looking at this as like, if I'm an independent or I see our country and we have these two main parties, seems like to have any chance of winning, the system is set up so that you have to be either a Democrat or a Republican if you want to have any chance of winning. And that is scary to me because you're either picking one or the other, and any strong candidates that are out there that might be a great choice for people, for voters, might not be able to go through the ranks because they don't bow to the particular party bosses. That's troubling to me as an independent, and I'm like, I want to change this. Seems like the only way I could change this is to get these 1,000, if I want to make this change, to make it easier for third-party candidates to not have to go through this. If we want a more diverse group in Congress, it sounds like to me we need strong people to run and change the way elections are done. Is that the only way to do it? You have to get elected so that you can make these changes, correct?
That's correct.
So with recent elections, were there any indications of voter fraud that you know of in Hamilton County? This is a tough question, but you're probably being asked a lot about it.
Sure.
People find out.
What, in my experience in the 17 years of conducting elections, I believe in Ohio that it's easy to vote and hard to cheat. And I think voter fraud is extremely rare, and I have not seen it on any type of wide-scale level, any type of conspiracy where people are working together to commit fraud. I have seen some individual instances of fraud. After every election, our bipartisan team takes a deep dive into the election, into the numbers. We look to see if someone cast 2 ballots. Now, that doesn't mean they had 2 ballots counted, but if they did cast 2 ballots, we look to see why. Was there an attempt, a malicious attempt to have 2 ballots counted? Could it be a situation where someone cast a ballot in someone else's name? We look into all of that, and again, what we have found it to be extremely rare. In this 2020 election, we have are currently still doing our due diligence and looking at any anomalies. The biggest anomaly, I guess, what occurs most often is a voter will cast a ballot by mail, and then they'll show up at their polling place to cast a ballot on election day. Now, when that happens, the voters is flagged in the system as soon as they make that request for a ballot by mail, so that if they appear in person to vote, or if they request another ballot by mail, they're required to vote provisionally, which means their ballot's not counted on election day. It's placed into an envelope. They fill out an affirmation with identifying information on that envelope, and it's held. And after election day, it's verified by bipartisan teams to determine whether or not that ballot should be counted. And if it is validly cast and the voter did not cast another ballot, that provisional ballot is added to the official count that occurs about 2 to 3 weeks after election day.
Have you sent anyone over to the prosecutor's office and said, hey, this looks malicious? Have you done that?
We have in the past. I just sort of wanted to go through the process because I want people to understand that only one ballot was counted in all of these instances. And when we contact the voter and we to find out why, it's usually a very reasonable excuse. They mailed their ballot back so late they were afraid it wasn't going to reach us on time, or they mailed their ballot and realized that they had forgot to affix postage and were afraid it wouldn't count or get to the board. But occasionally we have found something where it looks to be a little bit like there could be some malicious intent. We did have just one case so far in this November election where when we contacted the voter stated, I saw everything about fraud on the news and I wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to see if I could vote twice. So our board has just recently referred that situation to the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office to investigate further.
There's a lot of people that are saying it's a big fraud or it's a big conspiracy. So that sounds to you, and you're a Republican, is that nonsense?
Yes, that this election, I believe in the results of this election and in the outcome of this election.
And what's funny to me is there are people on television or people on social media that are pulling their hair out saying, no, wake up. It's a conspiracy, and the election was stolen. It's fascinating to me that, here I am. I finally went and I got you, and I'm sitting in front of you, the person that's in charge of all of this, and I believe you. And you look very believable, and there's people that are saying it's ridiculous. Your thoughts on that?
Well, there's just so much mis and disinformation about elections out there, and it's irresponsible. The information that's put out by some people. I've seen no evidence. I have looked at the accusations. I've looked at the evidence. Even though we here in Hamilton County and in the state of Ohio, we're not called into questions. The other states that are, some of those individuals I know personally. I've worked with on national task force. I know their level of devotion to the elections process, and I believe in the results in their state. I believe that they ran a fair elections.
So I know that I can go and I can ask people to talk to me, and you can turn me down or say yes, and you were nice enough to say yes. So here I am talking to you, and I just wanted to go straight to the source of the Hamilton County Board of Elections and ask your opinion, and I got it. I really was curious. I wanted to go in with an open mind, and so I'm questioning everything with everything that I see on the news now, and I have the only thing I am is a concerned citizen. I have the access to cameras, so I'm like, this is great. I want to ask you in front of the camera these things. That's just my own interjection. I have no question. I'm just kind of trailing off. So forgive me as I just kind of go off and just kind of soak up everything that's going on in this country, in this world, and with elections, and hearing you say there's no fraud, and seeing not everybody, but there's a lot of people saying it's a conspiracy. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, and what I would ask the public to do, those that have doubts, contact your local Board of Elections. I see a lot of information being put out there by people who may claim to be experts in technology or other fields, but I don't see this coming from elections officials, from people that have the experience, for the people that are in the know about how elections are administered. And so, I would encourage the public, contact your local Board of Elections. If you have questions, go onto their websites, get the questions answered for yourself. Give them a call if you're concerned about something. We very much want to get the truth about elections out to the public, because we want them to have faith in the outcome of their elections. Get involved, become a poll worker, be part of the process.
I love what you just said there, and I think that's the key message to get across. And I think that we need a strong centrist to come and say, hey, let's bring everybody together. We can't just keep dividing further and further. And so that's what I'm all about, just so you know. In the last election, we had a lot of mail-ins. Do we have stats on how many mail-ins, and how do you think this will change voter behavior going forward with all of the changes that kind of happened?
Sure, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. We did have a larger number than ever before vote by mail in 2020. And I think that was, a lot of people, due to the pandemic, did not want to go to in-person voting. And I think that's one of the things that's great about Ohio is voters have three choices. They can cast their ballots by mail, they can cast early in person at their Board of Elections, or the traditional on Election Day. And historically, 70% of voters in Hamilton County choose to vote in person on Election Day. That drastically changed for the 2020 presidential election. I don't want to give you the wrong stats. I have to look. I'm sort of moving on and thinking about the elections in 2021, so I've forgotten some of the numbers from 2020, but I believe we were more at 60%, I believe, had voted prior to Election Day. I think it'll be really interesting to see if that carries on over the next few years, once we hopefully have moved out of this pandemic. Will people, go back to voting in person or, on Election Day? Or have they found that by mail is just so convenient, they're going to stick with it? It'll be interesting to see.
I could come 3 weeks prior and vote right here?
That's correct.
When's the first day I can vote and just come here?
28 days prior to Election Day. Possibly 27, depending on how a holiday might fall in there. But the same time we start absentee voting by mail, on that very first day we mail ballots out. That's also the first day voters can come here to the Board of Elections and vote early in person, about 28 days before Election Day. And Big Bird does also get votes for president every once in a while.
Hey, with the choices we have this day and age, Big Bird might not be a bad idea. How many people in Hamilton County are registered to vote?
Yes, we were at 600,000 for the presidential the presidential general election. We have had some cancellations since then. We've dropped to about 594,000 currently.
Is there any sort of outreach that the Board of Elections does to get people to register to vote, or is it mainly the two parties that are getting people to register to vote, or how does that work?
Sure. I think it's never been easier to register to vote in Ohio because we have online voter registration. So that has kind of cut down the need a little bit for the board to go out into the community. Easiest way is to go online. You can go to our website, votehamiltoncounty.ohio.gov, and just simply register online. But if you do not have access to the internet, give us a call and 632-7000, and we will mail you a voter registration form. Voters can also register to vote at public libraries, the BMV. BMV is a pretty big one where people use that as an opportunity to update their registration or to register for the first time. But also the public library, schools, the treasurer's office. I think that and when we talk about outreach and into the community, it's not just the campaigns, but there's a lot of voting groups out there, just advocacy groups that go out into the community and try to educate the public and get them registered to vote.
I mean, there's elections every year, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, is that right?
That's correct.
There's some presidential years, every 4, and then every 2 years you have some, and then every 1 year. What's going up for grabs every year?
Sure.
Could you run down?
Well, in the state of Ohio, we do have elections every November at a minimum. We have a general election every November, and then there also, could be primary elections in the spring. Those are typically held in May, except for presidential years when they're held in March. And then also there's certain political subdivisions that could call a special election in August. Those are usually school districts that might put on a tax levy in August. The main focus I think everyone looks at is the general election that occurs in November. And so there's sort of a difference between odd year and even year elections. In Ohio, in even years, every 4 years, we're voting for the president and the federal offices, as well as a lot of state and local county-wide offices. Then we also have, in the even year that's not the presidential, we call them the gubernatorial years. I think a lot of times you hear about it on a national level referred to as a midterm. That's sort of because you do have those seats for Congress and Senate that are up in a non-presidential year. But in Ohio, that's the year we elect our governor and our statewide executive offices. So then what happens in odd years? Well, in odd years in Ohio, that's when all of the local jurisdictions are holding elections. So all of the cities, Cincinnati, here in Hamilton County, all of the small cities, the villages, the townships, they're all electing their mayor, their council members, their trustees, and all of our school boards, our school districts hold elections in odd years, again, electing school board members. Most of those jurisdictions stagger their terms, so perhaps in 2021, half of their council members are up for re-election where the other half is not. And then fast forward 2 years from now in 23, those that weren't up for election in 21 are up for election in 23. The city of Cincinnati does it a little differently. They have 9 council members and they are all up. All of their terms are up every 2 years. Now we had a little bit of a break from that where the voters, actually the city of Cincinnati through a charter amendment had amended the charter that they would serve for 4-year terms. That happened once, and then the voters immediately did another charter amendment and took it back to 2 years. So city council is back to being reelected every 2 years, and all 9 seats are up every 2 years. So all 9 seats are vacant and up for election in 2021.
You know what they say about all council members when they look in the mirror? They all see a mayor staring back at them.
That may especially be true this year.
I like that joke. I'm sorry. Another bad joke on my part. Sorry about that.
No. Especially with the city of Cincinnati. I don't know that, we haven't seen this many candidates file for mayor in a long time.
If someone wants to be a really informed voter, where would you take them?
Yes. Well, I do want to keep our goal here at the Board of Elections is to administer the election. So, we don't look at it. It is not our job to educate the voter on the candidates. That's something the voter needs to do themselves. Now, we encourage voters to be informed voters.
That's good.
We absolutely encourage them to be informed voters, but you understand for political reasons, we are those that count the votes. So we don't get involved. Just go to that candidate's website, at the very least, go to their websites, do some research, look at what issues are important to them, what are they speaking out about. But that's all we can do is just, you can go look at their website. You have to do your own research, the voter does. Again, because here at the board, our job is to administer the vote, count the votes, but not in any way sway someone to one candidate or another.
Sherry, I am so thankful for your time here today. You've given me a wealth of time, and I really appreciate it. There's a couple more things that I wanted to do, and that's get some stats and then just walk around the building with you, and then I'll be out of your hair.
Sure.
But is there anything else that you'd like to add about any topic that I didn't cover that you'd really like to push, or what can we as voters do to make your job easier?
Yes, I think it's again just taking some responsibility and becoming an informed voter, not just about the candidates and the issues and how you should vote, but how to vote. We make sure that you're registered on time. Make sure you keep your registration updated if you move or have a change of name. Contact the Board of Elections. Don't believe the stuff you hear and see on social media. Go to trusted sources, and your trusted sources are your local Board of Elections or your state's, your Secretary of State and their office. I really think that's what I want to push. Follow your local board on social media. We're constantly putting posts out and things that voters need to know to participate in the democratic process. And if you're concerned, get involved. Become a poll worker.
Well, cool. Well, let's go ahead and get the...
Do you want to do the tour first?
Yeah, let's do the tour first.
Let me it. Lots of interviews in 2020. Good morning.
Hello.
Hey, Dave, could you print out the page from the schedule of offices that shows the number of independent signatures required for both Senate and state rep? Do sort of have some historic voting equipment in our cases. This room on election day is really sort of the hub. This is where all the action is taking place as far as the Board of Elections goes during the day. We have about 50 individuals that are here to support the poll workers. So we have about 2,500 poll workers out in the field. If they have any questions, they call into this help desk, which is manned by our trainers and full-time staff. We want to get the answer, a consistent answer to all poll workers as quickly as possible. If something arises that we can't answer over the phone or can't resolve over the phone, we actually have a team of troubleshooters out in the field that can respond very quickly and get whatever issues that may arrive on election day resolved. So this is another room. Again, during election cycles, there's a lot of different processes that go on in these rooms. It's where we put together the absentee voting packets by mail. But more, I think, importantly on election night this is where the public and the media comes to view the count. We want to be as transparent as possible, so we have all glass windows that look into our vote counting room. So again, the public and the media are welcome to come and view the count from beginning to end. We can look at the warehouse.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's sort of usually, it sort of helps to put things in perspective on how massive of an operation a large county election is. Also want to point out, and to get into any rooms where there's voted ballots, you have to have both a member of the Democratic and the Republican Party in order to access the room.
Okay. Where's my independent one? Right
Yes,
here.
Again in Ohio, it's a bipartisan.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks for taking my jokes.
Yes. This is our, basically that's a floor to ceiling fencing. We call it the cage. After on election day, when all the voted ballots are returned from the polling places, they're secured inside the cage, where it takes, again, both a Democrat and a Republican to access those voted ballots. Basically, all of these caddies represent a polling place in Hamilton County, and inside of it, it has the portable voting equipment, the scanners, the disabled access unit, which is a voting device that allows voters with disabilities to vote independently. Our voting booths and all of our other supplies are contained in all of the caddies. And there's logic and accuracy testing conducted on every piece of equipment before it's placed out in the field to ensure that it's counting correctly. And back in the very back corner of the room is where our poll worker training center is, and that's where we train our approximately 2,500 poll workers before each election.
This is just massive.
Yes, it does. Seeing the warehouse really puts things into perspective.
Yeah, I had no idea.
It is a massive operation, that's correct.
And there's over 3,000 counties in the United States, so every county has something similar to this, correct?
Correct.
Wow, and there are over 3,000 kind of counterparts to you all running this show. And in our county, I think you already told me this stat, but how many workers on election night are helping out, volunteers, your staff? How many would you say?
Well, we have a staff of 44 full-time employees. We'll just use the presidential for an example. During the months leading up to election day, we had 200 temporary employees working here. On election night, we added another 150 to that. So that's we had quite a few, about 300 people working here election night, and then that doesn't include the 2,500 poll workers out in the field on election day.
Gosh, so that's close to 3,000 people that are all making it work.
Correct, making the election happen. Typically when we do a good job, we don't hear about it, right? And that's because people expect to be able to walk in, cast their vote, not have any problems. It's what they expect, and that's what we want to give to them.
Don't forget to do your research on all the candidates and issues, and plan ahead before you vote. For more information on all the things you need to know surrounding voting and the upcoming election, check out votehamiltoncountyohio.gov. Thanks for watching.